Hey everybody, Taylor here from Ciao Bella Sewing. I hope you guys are doing well and having a great day so far. Today I'm really excited because I'm going to show you how to make this adorable baby bib. You're going to have the option to use Velcro as your closure, or you can use snaps just like I did. Now this is a super fun project and I promise you it won't take too long. Let's get started. Here are all of the supplies that you are going to need to make your baby bib. You are going to need your Singer sewing machine. You will need a pair of scissors. You will need thread. Make sure that the color thread you are using matches the color fabric that you are going to use. You will also need sewing pins. Then you can either use Velcro or snaps for the bib closure around the neck. You will want to purchase some rickrack from the fabric store. That is trim that we are going to use around the edges of the bib, and the rickrack is available at the fabric store in the bias tape section. You are also going to need fabric. I personally am using flannel fabric because it is nice and soft, perfect for a bib. I'm going to use one fabric for the outside and one type of fabric for the inside. Then lastly, you are also going to need a paper pattern of a bib, or you can simply use an existing bib that you have and use that as your pattern when you go to cut your fabric. Now let's get started on this adorable project. As mentioned earlier, you can either use a paper pattern for your pattern, or you can actually use an existing bib that you already have and just use that as your pattern. So I'm actually using an existing bib that I have, and what I've done so far is I've actually folded each pieces of my fabric. So right here is the fold line and right here is the fold line. I took the bib, I just folded it in half just like this, and I placed this folded edge right here of the bib on the folded edge of the fabric. So once this is nicely in place exactly where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and just grab my scissors, and I'm going to use this existing bib again as my pattern piece. So as I'm cutting around, I'm leaving just a little bit of extra room so I can account for my seam allowance when I go to sew this. So again, I'm just following the existing bib and using that as my pattern piece. Okay, this is looking great so far. I'm going to turn this like this. It's a little bit easier for me to cut. And again, I'm leaving just a little bit of extra fabric around the edges while I cut to account for my seam allowance. Okay, so right now I have this cut. I'm going to remove my pattern piece and show you guys what the bib looks like so far. So when I go ahead and open this up, it looks like it's double the size, which it is because I folded the fabric on a fold and I cut the fabric on a fold. Now repeat this step for your other piece of fabric. Okay, now that I have my two pieces of fabric cut out, I'm going to go ahead and place the two pieces of fabric so the right sides of the fabric are now touching each other. This is going to be a step that we do in order to prepare for sewing. So all you do is you take one piece and put it on top of the other, again making sure that the right sides or the pretty sides of the fabric are touching each other. Try to line up the edges as best as you can. You want these two pieces to be really nice and even. Once you have the two pieces of fabric lined up together, and so the right sides are touching each other, you can go ahead and you're going to add some pins all the way around the edges of the fabric. As you're pinning, you probably just want to make your pins about 3 inches apart from one another, give or take. So again, right now we're preparing for sewing, so we're adding pins to the fabric. Pins are really helpful when you sew because it keeps the fabric together, especially around curves, and there are a lot of curves on a baby bib. Perfect. So go ahead, add pins all the way around, and then I'm going to show you how to get this sewed up. Okay, now that we have our bib all pinned, we are about to sew the bib around all of the edges. But we have to leave an opening because, as you remember, we have the right sides of the fabric together. So we're going to leave an opening right here on the right hand side of the bib that's about 4 inches long. So that way we can flip the bib right side out. So I'm going to go ahead and just add double pins between my 4 inches. I love to do this because this always helps me remember where I have to start sewing and where I have to stop sewing. So I have my set of double pins right there, about 4 inches apart. I'm going to start to sew right beneath my double pins. And I'm going to go ahead and line up the fabric with that 5/8 seam allowance. Since we cut a little bit of extra fabric around the pattern, we can definitely go ahead and sew on that 5/8 seam allowance all the way around the bib. Now, let's get started. Now that we have sewn all the way around our bib and we left an opening so we can turn the bib right side out, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna trim all of the edges, okay? So trimming the edges on curves is really important, so that way when you go to flip the bib right side out, all of your curves are still going to be curves and they're gonna look really nice. So just grab your scissors, and what you're gonna do is you are going to cut about 1/4 of an inch away from all of your seams. Again, the point of doing this is so that your curves actually remain as curves. Now that our edges are all trimmed, we're gonna go ahead and find the opening. We're gonna use the opening to turn this baby bib right side out. So just slowly start to turn the bib so the colorful pieces of the fabric will start to show. Okay, now that we have our bib turned right side out and looking fabulous, we're gonna go ahead and sew that hole closed. So whenever you're sewing a hole closed like this, you wanna make sure that the edges of your fabric are tucked in nicely so your finished edge looks nice and even, just like the rest of the bib. So go ahead with those edges tucked in and add some pins. I'm just going to add about 3 or 4 pins right here just to hold the fabric in place, so when I go to sew, the edges are going to remain closed and it will look awesome. So as I go to sew this, I'm actually going to sew on the edge of my fabric. I am not going to follow the standard 5/8 seam allowance right now because I want to make sure that I secure the hole closed, and I want to do it on the edge of the fabric so it's not very noticeable. Make sure to reverse, and you can take out your pins as you go. Again, I'm just following that hole and the curve, making sure that I'm sewing on the edge of the fabric. And I just got to the very edge of the hole, so I already reversed, and I'm gonna cut my threads. And then take a look at this. This is looking fabulous. Cut loose threads from when you were sewing. So now the entire bib is nice and secure. So we have about 2 more steps. We're gonna go ahead and add the rickrack right now all the way around the bib. And then we're gonna go ahead and add snaps, or you can add Velcro for your bib closure. And then we're done with this awesome project. Okay, as you can see, I've actually already prepared my sewing machine. So I have my bib, and then on top of it, I have the rickrack. And then I lowered my presser foot and actually spun the wheel on the side of my machine to lower the needle into the fabric to hold everything in place, okay? So that is a very important step, and it's a really good tip to get you started when you go ahead to sew this material so it doesn't move around. Now let's get started. Make sure to reverse as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and continue sewing all the way around, keeping the rickrack on the very edge of the baby bib. Okay everybody, now that our sewing is completed on our bib and we added the rickrack trim, which is looking super cute, it's time to either sew on the Velcro for the neck closure, or you can use snaps. Now, I personally like to use snaps. I think they're much smaller. They're also pretty easy to attach. I have this snap attachment. It's from Dritz. I got it from the fabric store. It comes in sizes 16 and 15. I am using size 16 today for the bib, and I actually recommend that you try this on some scrap fabric if it's your first time adding in snaps, just to make sure that you have the closures connected correctly. So go ahead, you're going to open this up, add in the snap closure. I've already added one side right here. And I'm going to lay this flat inside of this blue tulle. I lower one layer, and then I go ahead and add another layer right there. I shut this, and this is actually where you're going to need your hammer. You're going to go ahead and you're going to hammer this in place. Make sure that it's nice and secure because you don't want your snaps to come apart. So then you're going to go ahead and reopen this, and voila, that is looking great. So as you can see, I have one of my snap closures in place, and I actually already did my other snap closure as well. So then what you're going to do, you just take the two layers of fabric and snap them into place. Now, here is an adorable baby bib. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video and learning how to make a baby bib. Honestly, I think it's just an adorable project, and you can give it to somebody as a gift, or you can obviously keep it for yourself if you're expecting a baby. But it's a great way to use up some of your scrap fabric as well. Happy sewing, everybody.